Many of you know me as Michael Glinter, one of the top recruiters in the industry. I've been working in recruiting for 17 years, and I want to talk to you today about one of our biggest dangers in our business, and that is email. In 1999, when I first got started, we didn't have email. The way we got a hold of people was picking up a telephone and calling them. Very rarely or seldom did we use fax machines. And then the generation of phones, cell phones, and emails came through, and it really changed the way that we communicated. The problem is we take advantage of and for granted some of the things that emails do that are a detriment to our job. First, I want to talk about receipt of emails. When you send an email to somebody, 100% of the time you're thinking they got your email. It's normally the case. However, what's to say the email didn't get pushed into your junk folder or pushed into spam? The reason I'm bringing this up is it's happened recently. When you're sending emails to people, there's no guarantee that they actually got your email. Many of you have return receipts on, that you get receipts from them. Sometimes you don't. Many of you just rely on the fact that the email got there. But for all intents and purposes, one of the biggest things that we don't do is we don't assume that the other person didn't get the communication. So remember, when you're working with people and you're emailing back and forth, if you don't hear back from them, don't necessarily make the assumption they're ignoring you, and don't necessarily make the assumption that they forgot. Sometimes you need to get validation that they actually received your email. A lot of the times what I do with people is I ask them to return my email back with a confirmation, or I'll put in there, please respond with a return receipt. But at the end of the day, we rely solely on the fact that that email leaves our box and goes somewhere else. So when you're following up on emails, make sure not to take a negative approach. Don't assume to the other person that they didn't receive it, and certainly don't make allegations. But remember, if for some reason you didn't get a response, it's not necessarily that they're ignoring you. The other thing I want to talk about with emails is the tone of emails. When you pick up the phone and talk to somebody, they can hear what you're saying. They can hear how you feel. They can hear the sincerity. They can feel like what you intend it to feel like when you're talking to them. But when you send emails, they don't know how you're speaking. They don't know how you feel. All they know is the words on paper. One of the biggest mistakes that many people make is using all caps. I know somebody very close to me in my life that oftentimes will use all caps. She uses all caps not because she's yelling at me, but she's using all caps just as an expression of excitement or enthusiasm in many cases. Or sometimes she just forgets to take the caps lock off. The problem, though, is that as humans, we have gravitated to this understanding that when we see all caps, for the most part, we feel the other person is yelling at us or telling us something is wrong. So when you're formulating an email, you need to think about, how is the person on the other end going to respond? How are they going to feel when they get your email? Are they going to look at your email as something negative? Are they going to feel that you're yelling at them? Does your email appear to be talking down to them? It's very, very important to remember that your tone in your email is definitely not obvious. And so the words that you use and the way you express them ultimately will tell the person on the other end what you're trying to convey. So we've talked about receipt of emails. We've talked about the tone of emails. Now, let's talk about what you put in emails. The number one rule of thumb, as you know, is if you don't want other people to know, don't put it in an email. I can't tell you how many times over the years I've sent emails to my boss, and he's sent the email out to the entire company, not realizing I didn't want what I said to be made public. It's very important to remember that once your email leaves your inbox and hits the other end, you have no control over what happens next. That email can be used against you. That email can be publicized. That email can be forwarded to people that you don't intend it to be forwarded to. And even the worst part, when you're talking about somebody to somebody else, make sure you don't send the email to the person you're talking about. It's happened before. It'll happen again. The reason I'm coming on today and talking to you about the dangers of email is I think that as humans progress, we've lost touch with how we communicate. And I think it's very important to remember to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Especially if somebody hasn't heard from you and you haven't responded and they sent you an email. If they email you again, asking if you got their email, or if they leave you a message just to confirm you received it, don't take that as offensive. Don't take that as a criticism. Take that as just trying to get validation. Sometimes just a little validation from the person on the other end that they received it goes a long way. At the end of the day, picking up the phone is the easy solution. But we all know it's not the solution that none of us pick. So when you're writing your emails, when you're indicating and dictating what you want to say, think about what the person on the other end is going to think. Lastly, I want to talk about email length. So the average person determines their thoughts on an email within the first 30 seconds. Usually, it's after the first paragraph or the first couple lines. It really fascinates me when people send me an email that's 3 pages long and they really think that I'm going to read it. At the end of the day, human nature won't allow that to happen. That's why I don't encourage cover letters when my applicants send out their resume. Because does anybody really read a cover letter? No. You want to make sure that your email gets straight to the point. You want to make sure that whatever you're trying to convey in the email, you're not using crazy language or long-winded explanations to get to where you're looking for. Short, sweet, to the point, direct. Ultimately, you're going to get the respondent more interested if you're straight up, honest, and direct with them than if you lollygag. So make sure when you're writing an email, think about what you're trying to say. Use concise language that gets straight to the point. So at the end of the day, we've learned several things today. One, never assume people received your email. Don't get mad if somebody calls or emails you asking if you received it. Make sure you watch the tone, because a lot of times we don't know how the other person's talking or thinking. And last but not least, don't turn it into a book. Just because you have the ability to sound off doesn't mean people want to read 10 pages. If you take these tips and you apply them to your day-to-day, I barely think and guarantee that you'll get angry responses back or uncomfortable feelings from people saying they don't understand. I hope this helps, and I hope you're having a great Friday. If you want to learn more about staffing, recruitment, leadership, go to my website at michaelglinter.com.